Where we are on World Cup watch at the moment. We will be over the next couple of weeks looking at what it means for different sectors of the economy. Starting this morning with the obvious. Hotels. Very pleased to be joined in the studio now by Simon Leigh. He's the Regional Managing Director for Premier Inn Hotels. He's got 11 in the UAE and Qatar. Simon, good morning. It's lovely to have you.
Good morning, Brenny. How are you?
So what kind of occupancy are you on at the moment for Doha and for the UAE?
So for Doha, we've got the two hotels there, which you rightly said. We've 80% of that was already committed through Supreme Committee. So we've had a little bit released back, but pretty much that's majority of that was taken. A couple of additional contracts, so I think we should be pretty much bang on for 100% for the World Cup period. We've got the shoulder weeks, the shoulder periods each side as well, but looking healthy at the moment. So about 70% for the shoulders, but pretty much sold out for the game. So yeah, well positioned.
And here?
Here's looking good actually. We're about 15% up on last year in terms of business on the books for the same time. So I think we find ourselves well placed, but that is also in the middle of lots of other events as well. So it's not just necessarily World Cup, but we are seeing some of it flow through. But I wouldn't say it's all necessarily World Cup that's kind of lifting that up.
Do you have any indication of who is coming for the football? Is it the sort of thing you want to know, I guess, are in your hotel during that time?
Data in terms of guest is very, very important. So we're seeing, you're actually seeing kind of about just over 30% coming from Europe and the UK. You're seeing quite a large percentage coming from the US as well. So at the moment, probably just over 50% of that is from UK, Europe, US. And then you're seeing it from a mix of other countries as well, but they're pretty much the biggest source markets at the moment in terms of where we're seeing the World Cup traffic coming from.
And what does it mean for you operationally? Will you be doing anything different during the Cup?
Yeah, we're going to absolutely get behind it in terms of the F&B. So we've got really good F&B outlets across all the hotels. So we've got Mr. Toads that we'll make sure that we really get behind, and we've got big screens, so we're going to be looking at how we can make sure that we get people in, both in terms of hotel guests that are staying there, give them a great opportunity to go and experience the games there, but also for people in the local communities as well. So it's really about how can we activate that within the F&B outlets is very important.
How do you keep everyone happy in the hotel if it's not 100% football guests? Because you don't want to dampen anyone's fun.
Yeah.
But if anyone happens to be in town for the 12th annual Widget Conference and would like a decent night's sleep the night before, how do you balance that?
Yeah, look, Premier Inn, it's always about a great night's sleep. So I'll start with that. And in terms of our service will continue to be exceptionally good. We'll always make sure we're consistent. Do I think that we'll end up with lots of enthusiastic guests that may be celebrating the games?
Emotional guests.
Emotional, yeah. I think you get a mix of emotional, both happy and sad throughout the game. So I think we just need to manage that on a case-by-case basis. But I don't expect that to be too much of a problem.
How long are people booking for? What's the average stay during the World Cup period?
So you go from people coming for specific games, coming in into Dubai and then shuttling over. The hotels in Qatar are typically longer because of the types. It's corporate. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is media, a lot of it's corporate, and therefore it's pretty much for the duration of the games themselves. In terms of the hotels here, it ranges from people that are fully committing to seeing the games all the way through and are booking on that basis. It does create a risk in terms of wash. So that's when rooms will be booked but then won't be taken. So if people don't stay for the entire duration they've booked.
Does that mean what? Because their team is knocked out?
Yeah, potentially. So if your team gets knocked out, they decide to go home. They then have the right to cancel the remaining rooms, and then we've got the opportunity.
Is that normal if I've booked a hotel? Because if I'd booked somewhere for a week and 3 nights in was like, sorry, I'm leaving, my plans have changed. I don't generally get a refund.
There's a level of flexibility. So we could charge. Or we could choose the option not to charge and then resell the inventory. So there's an opportunity there for us to potentially resell inventory as well. It is a challenge in terms of can we make sure that we can manage that in terms of revenue and hitting what we need to in terms of budget. But I think being flexible is very important.
Shall I ask who you think's going to go home first?
No. I think from an England perspective, I might have a slight bias. Not going home first though. I'd like to see them go as far as they possibly can.
Do you have so you don't have a minimum stay on, which you could do with the demand?
You could do minimum night stays, but we've chosen not to for the World Cup.
The million dirham question, of course, is what are rates doing in all of this?
So, and this is kind of part of the reason I wanted to come back and have a bit of a chat, because I think Tom mentioned a few weeks ago the average rate was around 1,500 dirhams currently. You look at the average rate in the market; it's much nearer 600, 700 when you take everything into consideration. For us at the moment, we're about 161 year to date in terms of average room rate. As you go into the World Cup, our room rate's near 300 per night at the moment, but that's going to be dynamic, and it will be dependent upon occupancy, and it will be dependent upon the volume of business that comes in. So I think we find ourselves well placed for World Cup guests to come and stay at Premier Inn. Great rate, great proposition. So from my perspective, we're there at about 300 dirhams during the World Cup, and others are over 1,000, 2,000. So pretty well placed.
Is that a deliberate decision on your part to keep rates there? Because I presume if your occupancy is well up there, particularly in Qatar, you could charge more for that.
Qatar's slightly different. So Qatar is contracted. Mm-hmm. So through Supreme Committee, as well as the corporate contracts that we've decided to sign there, the market here in Dubai will be driven by occupancy, and we use revenue management systems. So we monitor as occupancy drives. We use the revenue management system to therefore price accordingly. If that goes up, that's what the rate would be today. If that, as the business on the books builds and our occupancy grows, then we will choose to manage that rate accordingly and price accordingly as well. So,
what about the quarter outside of the World Cup? We've got 1 minute left with you before we let you go. How is Dubai looking and feeling in general?
Pretty good. We've had. I'm a year in now into role. 3 things that I wanted to do was trade the business brilliantly, invest back into the business, and then earn the right to grow. We've done that. We're in profit. We're already halfway through our new financial year, and we've had a stellar 6 months. I think that's testament to the strength of the market here as well. So, in a good place. It will be interesting to see what happens post World Cup. I think into next year as well. Hopeful the market will stay strong, but we're well placed at the moment in terms of how we're performing. So I think Dubai is in a good place. It's strong.
30 seconds. Are you noticing any currency effect? Any knock off from the strong dollar?
Not, if I'm honest, no, not at this moment in time. It hasn't, in terms of, it is a consideration. So on my mind, if you think about UK as an example, inbound into our hotels, part of what I want to do is have a value proposition and therefore get people into Dubai. If inflation runs high and runs hot, less money in people's pockets, less likelihood to travel, and less likelihood to potentially travel here. So I'm thoughtful about it, but we're not seeing it necessarily at the moment.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Simon Leigh is the Regional Managing Director for Premier Inn Hotels, talking to us about the demand that they are seeing and the rates they're charging for the World Cup.
Dubai Eye 103.8.
Join the conversation.